So, under the motion, this House believes that South Korea should abandon mandatory military conscription and move to a voluntary recruitment system. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome the Prime Minister to start the debate. Here.
So we believe that simply the time passed when they simply determined the military force of the country, but how much amount of the soldier it has. We believe that we're living in a 21st century, and actually there is enough, rather the point of how much military force it have and how much security the country has is towards how much good weapon you have and how much good technology drone you have or extra. So we believe that in this kind of situation, actually lots of countries are opting to in developing better quality weapons or higher technology drones that they can use. Plus they're even developing AI soldiers or whatever. So we believe that when the technology, when the point is towards not just simply how much amount of soldier you have, and we believe that it is an old story. And actually in this kind of situation, it is simply unnecessary to make it mandatory military conscription. So we believe that in this debate, we will mainly prove two things. First, we will prove about how making it mandatory is simply harming the citizens' rights. Second of all, about how it is very unnecessary to make the military conscription mandatory. So going on to the definition, what do you mean by making it mandatory? It's in the current status quo that we force citizens to go into the military and serve as a soldier or whatever. And if they don't do it, we simply just punish them or send them to jail or whatever. So however, what definition means by making it voluntary, we believe that it's making it as one way of a job soldier or whatever, and letting them to simply volunteer, not forcing. So our science model is that when we simply make it as their choice and make it voluntary, we'll actually pay well and we will pay a certain pay amounts that is actually necessary for them as a job, and also we will make it as an honorable job so that we give them enough incentive to actually go on and voluntary or whatever. So under the principle of liberty, our side's first argument is citizens' right. So we believe that there are dozens of citizens' rights. And we believe that this also includes about right to move, right to buy, or actually right to choose their work or whatever. And we believe that when we just simply send them to military and just force them, we believe that this is violating the citizens' rights. So we believe that in this kind of cases, for example, instead of serving to the military and saving their 1 year with just simply going on and serving the military, even when it is not their simple choice, they have rather in that time they could actually study if they're a college students, and they could rather develop themselves, or they could go and find more experience or whatever. However, we believe that when we just simply force people that you have to go without determining where their condition or whatever, simply saying that you must go to the military, then they could simply lose the vulnerable time that they can use to study, or they could use to develop themselves or whatever. We believe that this is harming their right, and also we believe that in the military, since it harms dozens of people's right, for example, right to move or right to go and buy whatever you want, to right to meet your relatives as you want or whatever. And we believe that actually in this kind of cases, we must leave it to their own choice, not just simply forcing them in this kind of cases when they must lose their lots of right or whatever. So going on to the second argument is about how making it as mandatory is not necessary. So we believe that nowadays it is actually the time passed when we simply said that we need lots of soldiers to make our security better. So they will probably say that actually they need security or whatever, but we believe that there are dozens of reasons why our side could still need security when we don't make it mandatory and make it voluntary. So first, we believe that, as I told you in the status quo and in the opening, that rather the point of the security or point of the military force nowadays is rather toward how much better weapon you have, how much good technology you have or extra. So we don't just simply need lots of soldiers as before. And second, we believe that in our side, we could make higher quality soldiers, because since it is not just the country only forces you that you have to go to the military, losing your 1 year or whatever, but since it's now their own choice and they volunteer to do it, we believe that they feel more responsibility, that therefore they will try harder. Also, the money that we use for so many soldiers could not just concentrate into certain soldiers, whether we make them, better training system or whatever. Third of all, we believe that there is another countries, for example, US or whatever. So we believe that we just simply in the Korea, so we just simply don't need that much of a soldier as before. So we believe that when it is not just simply necessary, and we could still gain security in our side because of these reasons. Because we believe that there is enough drones, and there is we can make high quality soldiers, and they feel more responsibility. However, in their side, what happens is, yes, there will be few soldiers who feel responsibility for whatever, but we believe that there There are cases when they actually don't really feel the responsibility or whatever, because simply it is the force. However, in our side, where we say that this is like an honorable job, we make them as an honorable job, and we then pay them much as they need and like pay well. Then we believe that the soldiers will be much more incentivized to work harder or whatever. And also we believe that whether in our side, we believe that even though they say that the amount of soldiers is so important, we believe that actually it is not, because there is other kind of drones or technology, and that is more important. So what have I told you today? I told you our side's two arguments. First, under the principle of liberty, the first argument was about the citizen right. How when we simply force them to go to the military, it is just simply violating the citizen's right, and in the case we must leave that as a choice, because we're just simply saying that the time 1 year that you can use for developing yourself, or the 1 year that is so much crucial to you, or for example, especially when you are studying or whatever, and also we're just limiting the right to move or buy or whatever extra, then we believe that in these cases we must not force them, and we must let it as a choice. Second, we told you about how it is not necessary in nowadays, according to 3 reasons. About first, how there is the time passed and it is it's just simply old days, when the amount is so important, that the weapon, drone, or technology is way more important, and we can actually use more money on that after this. And second, about how we have high quality soldiers, and third of all, about how there are other countries or extra. Thank you for listening, and by this reason, I'm very proud to propose.
So, without further ado, I'd like to welcome the LO to continue the debate.
May I start?
Yep.
Mr. and Madam Speaker, the government is trying to make this South Korea, which is not that safe in the status quo, into the total chaos. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, fellow debaters and honorable judges. We are the opposition team on today's debate, and we strongly disagree with this motion. This House believes that South Korea should abandon mandatory military conscription and to move to a voluntary recruitment system. As a leader of the opposition on today's debate, before I move on to our team's first and second argument, I would first like to rebut to the previous speaker, the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister talked about it is harming the citizens' rights, and it is forcing and it is violating the citizens' rights. However, Mr. and Madam Speaker, still, since in the military, in the current society, there are lots of benefits and advantages that are given to the soldiers that are working in the militaries, and also, we the opposition strongly believes that this is nonsense. And secondly, she told about that we don't need lots of soldiers in the current society because we need more skillful weapons and other things. However, in North Korea, there's lots of soldiers they're present in now in the status quo. Compared to them, the South Korea has only few soldiers that are in present right now. Also, even the weapons are more strong. North Korea uses the nuclear weapon when they are doing the wars. We think the honorable opposition strongly believes that we should at least prepare on the number of the soldiers, because we have less soldiers than them in the status quo. Now, as the leader of the opposition on today's debate, I would move on to our team's first and second argument, which is about there's no problem in the status quo, and this is the case that government can limit the freedom of choice against the soldiers. Our team's first argument is about that there's no problem in the status quo. In the status quo, the South Korean military allows the soldiers to use cell phones after they after they finish their works, and also the military gives the monthly pay to the soldiers. Also, since the soldiers had complained that they have a waste of time during the amount of time they are they're staying in the military, the government is considering about the policy of giving more points to the soldiers who are preparing to get employed after their works in the military. Also, since the soldiers have lots of time to do cell phones, we the honorable opposition strongly believe that the soldiers don't have a waste of time, because they can prepare to be employed and they can study and develop themselves during the time that they can use cell phones by looking at other lectures or or what else at the YouTubes. The point that the government can argue which the soldiers don't have many benefits and advantages at the mandatory military. However, on this point we have lots of things to say. The soldiers' benefits has first, they give monthly pay. The government gives monthly payments, and second, it gives the military and the government give and allow cell phones after their work. Thirdly, first in the past, it was 25 months, 2 years to stay in the military. However, too many complaints were coming, so the government thankfully shortened it into 18 months. Fourthly, the soldiers have the right. No, thank you. Soldiers have the right to have a religion or pray or what else at the military during their times in 20 months. And Mr. and Madam Speaker, we the opposition strongly believe that this is enough for the soldiers, and it is not violating their rights to have freedom of choices and freedom of other rights. Since these kind of advantages and benefits make the life in the military and the mandatory military to be free and very comfortable for the soldiers, there is no problem in the status quo. Our team's second argument is that this is the case that the government can limit the freedom of choice against, yes.
So you told you about how somehow we give enough treatment to the soldiers, but what do you think about that they get only 10만 원 a month when they use their 1 year of vulnerable time even not to their choice?
Our team is saying that it is giving the monthly pay and also other benefits and the advantages that the soldiers can have during the military. So we strongly believe that this is enough for the mandatory military, because the real purpose of the mandatory military is to protect our country, the South Korea, which in the current society the war is not over. To continue. Our second argument is that this is the case that the government can limit the freedom of choice against them. In South Korea, there is a mandatory of thinking and protecting the country to all of the citizens, including the women and children, etc. The goal of the mandatory against the Korean citizens is to prevent the future. The government can argue that the women should attend to the military. However, in the scientific fact, a woman's criteria of body is weak compared to the men. Also, they do periods, and also the mandatory military has long-term effects. In a mandatory military, they include soldiers who are prepared in any time, because in a Korean Peninsula, as I am keep on mentioning, the war is not over yet like other countries. To prevent and prepare for the North Korea's invasion of any times, we need lots of soldiers to protect our country and citizens, Mr. and Madam Speaker. In this case, Mr. and Madam Speaker, we the honorable opposition strongly believe that the government can limit the freedom of choice. Also, even if we are in the democratic society, Mr. and Madam Speaker, we the citizens get violated on many freedoms. For example, like drugs, and more specific things will be explained from the honorable Deputy Leader of the Opposition. To conclude, I strongly oppose this motion. Thank you.
I'd like to welcome the Deputy Prime Minister to continue with
May I start?
Yep.
So maybe our opposition is come from 100 years ago, because actually they know the fight and they know the war. They actually use their sword or maybe like gun that actually kill each other. But we believe that in the current war, this doesn't happen. The current war and the who side win is decided by the technology and what missile they have. We believe that those are the key issue and those are the key concept of the war nowadays. So we have to advise them to live in current status quo, please. So let's move on to talk about our side's first. So let's move on to talk about rebut their side's first and second argument, and extend our side's first and second argument, and lastly talk about why it will also give a benefit for the society too. So let's move on to their first argument. So their sides talk about it is not a problem and it is still justifiable because actually they pay and they treat as good as like normal like job. But we believe that firstly, actually it doesn't happen. They give like just like maybe like $100 for months. So we believe that actually it is not fair fair, or actually it is not good treatment for those workers that actually use their like very special time, which is especially in like 20. So we believe that actually they have to use 1 year to 2 years for those labor, and they have to actually live their life, but they only give like $100 per month, and this is fair treatment. We believe that this is not fair treatment that actually they keep arguing. And also secondly, talk about there's a second argument which is about the limit choice, and there's a talk about like government can limit choice when it's really serious situation. But we are keep talking about it is not a very serious situation. Firstly, they are the like those AI attack or drone attack or missile attack that actually can replace those, and those like soldier actually doesn't need much in the current war. And secondly, also there will be high quality and elite like soldiers that come to get those recruits, because actually when we make it as a job, those whole like skills and elites will come to this job and they will work for our country. So we believe that why we provide actually much more high quality and elite soldier for our country. And lastly, there are the check and balance between the other countries. So we believe that also we can make a check and balance without our country itself to become stronger. So we believe that we are providing those three alternative and three check and balance that we can actually show. But there says only take the citizens' right and citizen time, that which is really special for resources, especially in 20 or like really young age. So we believe that actually those limits of choice cannot be justifiable because there are the other alternatives. So we believe the government cannot justifiable for taking their right. So let's move on to extend our first and second argument in this debate. Firstly, about the liberty and right of those citizens. So when we go to the military and when we go to military by force, actually it is not a difference between the forced recruitment happened, which is about in Japan or like those Nazism, because actually firstly they do not want to go in, but actually they forced to go in and limit the place that you can live or limit the place that you can go. And also secondly, you are providing just some product that actually doesn't fulfill the right of the choice and right of the buying. And thirdly, actually you also invade the right to like work at what do you want and research what do you want. So we look at actually they are taking those rights, which is basic for those citizens, and government or the government should be a stakeholder that actually have to protect those rights, but they are actually invade the citizens' rights and just take it. We believe that this is not fair, the thing that government responsible government have to do. And secondly, about the inefficiency, because actually in society we keep talking about the three alternatives, which is about the firstly those technology that actually we exactly use in current status quo, and secondly like those high quality and other like the elite soldier will come. And lastly, other countries like check and balance and other maybe like USA or other supportive country to Korea will help us. So we believe that actually there are the three key issue and key alternative that we can use, but there's actually keep concentrating in the one system, which one aspect, which is about the soldier that we actually do not use in the war or use in the fight. So we believe that when there are the alternative, we believe that we do not have to actually take those citizens' right, and we believe that it is really inefficient to actually recruitment those whole and care those whole and use those tax as to care those each as individual that actually do not have enough skills to protect Korea. So we believe that actually it is really inefficient to recruit those whole like thousands of the soldiers that actually do not know how to fight or how to do. So we let's move on to our last argument, which is about the social development and what and we can provide to the society. So actually when we see the society and when we see the system of the military, they have to use like 1 or 2 years, which is actually really long for those young age. So we believe that actually those time and those scene is really important for those like 20 years, like 30 years old people, because actually they are really they work and research most than other age, and they are the people that work in like college, or actually they develop those education or they develop those knowledge or other process that they made. But government actually take those 2 years for whole people to cannot develop those social society advantage. So we believe that in their case, their just making the situation to make those whole developer and whole researcher to waste their time waste their 2 years for unnecessary thing. So we believe that when we use these 2 years to actually develop other maybe like social skills or maybe develop making maybe we provide or right to actually do their research, we can actually much more giving the chance of the develop of those education. Maybe for example, when we give an example, like maybe when you are the like a college student of the like maybe physical thing, when you can actually make or develop like other maybe experiment that you can do. So we believe that actually when we give like 2 years or 1 year that you can do whatever you want, we can actually provide this full enough time to those people that those time is really important and they can develop or they can actually research for other stuff. So in this debate, we mainly talk about 3 things, which is about the firstly, why it is so inefficient for like those using those military force for those like soldiers, and secondly, we provide the why it is the invasion of the liberty and right, and lastly, we are providing why it can actually improve the social development. So because those reasons, I'm more than proud to propose.
Continue with the debate. Here. Start whenever you're ready.
May I start?
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, we believe we shouldn't pass this motion and make military mandatory because as we argue, there are 3 different strong arguments to prove our stance. Also, as I'm the DLO of today's debate, I will present our team's last argument and to rebuild our team's case under the motion. This House believes that South Korea should abandon mandatory military conscription and move to a voluntary recruitment system. And before I move on to the rebuttal, let me rebuild the government's case. They have argued that in the current world, the result is decided by the technology, but they didn't really talk about the specific mechanisms, and they didn't really talk about. They also argued that there are like drones and different technologies, but they didn't really talk about this. They had unclear alternatives. So we believe this point is wrong. And we have also argued that in status quo there are no problem in our society because we give a full advantage to the soldiers, such as giving monies and supplying them to use their phones and to use their free times. And they have argued that $100 per month is unfair, and this treatment is unfair for the soldiers. We believe this point is wrong because the country is giving a fair money and fair thing for soldiers to
the point now.
The government is giving the fair opportunities and fair alternatives to the soldiers who had a time in the military conscription. Also, we have argued that it's limit of choice, and they have argued that this is not a serious situation because the technology and AIs can be replaced, and they have argued that had natural check and balances. As we argued, they didn't really talk about specifically about the alternatives, so we believe this point doesn't stand. Moving on to the rebuttals, they have argued that this mandatory military is invading the rights of work to the soldiers, and they have also argued that government's role is to protect the right of the citizens. And they have also argued about inefficiency, that they had alternative about technology, and the technology can replace. Well, we believe this point is wrong because this point is clearly an assumption from the government side, because we believe we can really 100% guarantee that technology and AIs can replace all the job from the soldiers, and we believe as we argued, we believe their alternative was not detailed, so we believe this point is wrong. They have also argued about social developments and time is important, and the mandatory military is preventing researchers and people to prevent their development. And while they are spending time, they can research. And as we keep on mentioning, the time is guaranteed within the military and also the government is considering about giving more chance and give more points at the employment test as well. So we believe it is justified for the government to have the mandatory military services. Moving on to our last argument, the purpose of mandatory military conscription. Moving on to our last argument, we believe the government is making the military to be mandatory because of some important reasons. The government is forcing people to go to the military not because just for fun. They are forcing citizens to go to the military because government's role is to protect citizens, even though it violates some freedom and rights. We are living in a democracy society, but we are still violating some rights and freedom. Therefore, the purpose of government forcing to mandatory military is to protect citizens from the danger from the war. In our country, there are some sad history because of the war. For example, we had a war with Japan, which is Imjinweran. In Imjinweran, various citizens died and the country was destroyed and the nation was corrupted because the invasion of the Japan. And also we had another sad history, which was the war between our country and the past China, which is Pyeongjahoram. And as in Jimeran, lots and lots of people damaged their lives and all of their monies and all of their infrastructures because of this war. And we believe this war happened because the government didn't fully prepare for this war. So we believe by making the military mandatory, we can prepare the war and different dangers from other countries because we have sufficient amounts of soldiers to provide the dangers and different invades from other countries. So we, the honorable opposition team, strongly believe we should not pass this motion. I'm proud to oppose.
They start whenever you're ready.
May I begin?
Yep.
We believe that opposition in today's debate is thinking that if the North Korea has a nuclear bomb, we have some ways if we have dozens of soldiers in the status quo. If the North Korea itself has a nuclear bomb and think that our side has dozens of soldiers, Mr. Speaker, the dozens of soldiers will simply disappear because of the one shot that came out from the North Korea side, which means that their thoughts are really awkward to actually see. Two clashes that identify in today's debate. Firstly, will there be a security crisis after passing this motion? And secondly, is the status quo enough, as the opposition argues? But before that, Mr. Madam Speaker, let me first do some rebuttals towards my previous speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, the previous speaker talked about that there's a reasons that why the military is mandatory in the current status quo. And they said that the reasons why the past wars post-Korea happened is because the government itself didn't prepare for this war. Mr. Speaker, we believe that the government itself gave you a total reason or alternative to actually prepare for the war itself, but rather the deputy prime minister, deputy leader opposition said that drones won't even work in the reality. But Mr. Speaker, we believe that drones or AI soldiers are even available comparing to their side of the house thoughts. Why is it so? For example, Mr. Speaker, USA is already using some drone attacks to actually get rid of terrorist groups in the status quo, which we can simply see some drones are already working in some circumstances. For example, war or somewhat terrorist, I don't know, something like that. Which means, Mr. Speaker, we are already proving you that we got alternatives to keep the security. And before I go, my rebuilds towards our arguments will be included, my clashes, and therefore I'm going to go into my first class, which is about will there be a security crisis after passing this motion. Mr. Speaker, the opposite came up to the podium and said there's going to be a security crisis after passing this motion because naturally speaking, Mr. Speaker, in our side of the house, we're going to have lower amounts of soldiers, person soldiers or whatnot. But however, Mr. Speaker, Speaker, note that we're having two alternatives, which is first, we're not necessarily saying that we're going to get rid of all human soldiers as their deputy prime minister, as their deputy leader opposition think. We're also going to have human soldiers, which are qualified as we argued, and we're also going to have some AI soldiers as we're going to develop technology as far as we can, and we're also going to have some drones to attack the other countries in some worse circumstances, which means, Mr. Speaker, we already gave you alternative that even though we pass this motion, we can still have our security in our roles. But rather, Mr. Speaker, their side talks about the history that happened before. We have to prevent, or I don't know, things like that North Korea may invade our country. But Mr. Speaker, we believe that this may not happen because as we talked about, there's check and balance between the countries or international relationship to begin with. Mr. Speaker, if the North Korea, let's just imagine North Korea invade our country or whatnot, then they try to shoot like nuclear bombs or something else. Mr. Speaker, we believe according to the agreement that we made with the countries or whatnot, we believe that according to MAD or whatnot, the USA or other countries existing in the status quo will actually have a check and balance system to prevent happening in the first place, and they're also going to help us after the circumstance happens, which means, Mr. Speaker, we don't necessarily believe that there's going to be so much security crisis as the opposition thinks in today's debate. Going on to my second clash is the status quo enough. So opposition in today's debate argue that they're already giving some privilege in the status quo. They argue four things. Firstly, they're already giving money, which is like 10만 won monthly, and they say it is enough for their job or whatnot. And secondly, they said that already shorting time for the soldiers, soldiers complaints, or I don't know. And thirdly, they already give some rights to religion. And fourthly, they're already giving phones or whatnot. But Mr. Speaker, we believe that these things can also are already happening in the status quo in ordinary life, which means that in our house we're having more rights, more liberty towards the individuals. In comparison, we believe that even if we say, Mr. Speaker, let's say they're having rights to do something as they believe. But Mr. Speaker, in comparing the scale, we believe because we're even privileging or giving rights, affording rights to more amount of individuals to begin with, we believe that we won the comparison of the scale to begin with. And our proposition side argued three things. Firstly, we believe that in the status quo we're limiting rights to begin with. We're limiting rights to actually use their time or whatnot to actually develop themselves or whatnot. And second, and we also talked about we can actually replace some things with the technology existing in the status quo. We can just invest them with those individuals that will be left over. And we believe that in the status quo it is so hard to actually handle the individuals, every single individual that actually went to the army itself. And thirdly, we gave you alternative, for example, drones, AI soldiers or whatnot existing in the status quo. And we believe that our side was so much better comparing to their setup house because, Mr. Speaker, they just simply lost their rights. In their setup house, the individuals that went to the military itself just simply lost their rights because due to keep their security. But rather, Mr. Speaker, I'm going to say that if our side proves to you that even our side can then prove that we have the security as they do, or even better security, Mr. Speaker, we believe that we're side that has the liberty and also the security. But however, they're only going to have security, but even less security than our side of the house we have, which means, Mr. Speaker, they lost the comparison in today's debate, which means that at the end of the day, they're going to have the worst word compared to our side of the house. So what did I do today? Mr. Speaker, I rebutted to the previous speaker, and I talked about two clashes. Firstly, will the security crisis occur if the policy happens? And secondly, is the status quo enough to actually maintain their liberty or whatnot? Within these reasons, I'm more than proud to propose.
Now I hear. Yes.
So, Mr. and Madam Speaker, the irresponsible government has only talking about wasting the time of the soldiers and alternative, which is wrong and cannot happen. Also, they did not talk about why we the South Korea should follow the USA. So as the opposition whip speaker today, I'm going to talk about why we got this debate home with two clashes I made. Before moving to our team's first class, which is is there a problem in the status quo? I would like to rebut to the previous speaker, the government whip speaker. The government whip speaker had talked about some alternatives, which is AI soldiers. However, even there are lots of technology of AI, it is hard to make lots of AIs like the soldiers. Also, if AI soldiers is too much, don't you think AI would invade our world? There are lots of problems to think about. So this point is wrong. Now, moving on to our team's first class, the problem of status quo. So, Madam and Mr. Speaker, what is the most important thing to pass a policy? We, the honorable opposition side, thinks it is when there is a problem in the status quo. No thanks. However, Madam and Mr. Speaker, there is no actually problem in the status quo. So, Mr. and Madam Speaker, first, I would like to talk about the government's case with what is in the problem in the status quo. The government side has said in the problem in the status quo is that it violates citizen rights, and the Prime Minister has said that it is waste of time for the soldiers. Some of the people going to the military might think it is a waste of time, and we the opposition side actually agree with this argument a bit. However, we believe that, Madam Speaker, it is not a waste of time for the society and both people who go to the military. To explain this, I would like to talk this in two cases. The first case is that because after people go out of the military, they get lots of time. Actually, it is very good to the society because even there is people gone for up to a year of time, Mr. and Madam Speaker. What do you think that why we are safe in the current society? It is because of the military. There is no guarantee that other country will not come to our country and invade our country. So, Mr. and Madam Speaker, no thanks. Think about our country's past. We had lots of loss and harms and damage after the wars. The government and citizens all do not want this past again. So, government does the military mandatory. Also, the Prime Minister has said in the POI, the people in the military can love money of work and even they go to the military for 1 year. So this is our second case. However, Mr. and Madam Speaker, we the honorable opposition side think that there is lots of benefit for the soldiers, and as our leader of opposition has talked a lot, Mr. and Madam Speaker, why do you think it is a waste of time? It is not a waste of time for the safer society. The irresponsible government has actually does not have guarantee there is no war will actually happen. So also, however, the honorable opposition side has specific reason why we take this clash. Madam and Mr. Speaker, as our honorable leader of opposition has talked a lot about this. There are lots of things like service and welfare for the military. There are lots of things. The government has gave lots of welfare to the military. Madam and Mr. Speaker, we know that, for example, as lower days that people go to the military, and also the military people can use phones to know phones nowadays. Also, as our leader of opposition has rebutted, the people in the military can do lots of things in the military, for example, studying. The government is giving lots of benefits, so therefore there is no problem in the status quo. Also, we the opposition side is also making our world is the most safe. However, the irresponsible no thanks government is keeping on mentioning the waste of time only. However, we have proved that that is wrong because people can still study by phones like lesson in YouTube. So we got this first point. Now moving on to our team's second point, the limiting their rights is okay in the long term. So Mr. and Madam Speaker, we the South Korea is already limiting other people's freedom of choices such as drugs to choose or other things. Before moving to the reason why the opposition side had got this clash, I would like to talk the government side's argument about this clash. The government side has said that the policy which is doing in the status quo, however, as our opposition side is keep on mentioning and emphasizing there are lots of benefits and advantagements to the soldiers, and the benefit from long term is more important than the freedom that it is violated, Mr. and Madam Speaker. Think if there is a big war, however, we have only lots of technology as the government side is just keeping on repeating. Madam and Mr. Speaker, there is lots of technology, however, the people does not know how to do it. Then there is no use of the good technology. The most important thing is people's ability to do it and or how to use it. We the honorable opposition side has only talked the honorable opposition side is making a better and a safer society, Mr. Speaker, because there are lots of benefits, and Mr. Speaker, in the long term, as our deputy leader of opposition has taken a lot of in her arguments, we can make a most safe society. So now I would like to compare both worlds after the policy passed in two cases. First is the short term. The The government point is that the soldiers can get their rights and they do not go to the military if they don't want it. However, the opposition side insert terms they can be stressed or get tired by the military. However, in the second place, the long term, the government side is not prepared for the war, and if the war happens, they cannot prevent it as a good way. However, we, the honorable opposition side, is prepared for the war and can prevent the world as prevent the world. So I would like to explain it in a trade-off. The government side can get their rights, however, they cannot get the safe society. Mr. Speaker, however, we, the honorable opposition side, can get safe society and the rights. The citizens can get so much harm in the government society. So, Mr. Speaker, as I am the opposition whip speaker, I today talk about our teams to clash and rebut to the previous speaker. We, the honorable opposition side, could only make the safer place. Thank you for listening.
Okay,
May I start?
yes.
Mr. and Madam Speaker, the irresponsible government is trying to make our country too weak and so weak to fight against any country of any country if they invite. As the opposition reply, and since I'm here to wrap up our team's case, before I move on to the best case scenario and the worst case scenario and compare both sides, I would like to summarize each side's arguments. First, the government's argument was first, it is harming the citizens' rights, and we don't need lots of soldiers because the South Korea has lots of skillful weapons. And lastly, they talked about the social development, and the time is very important, but in the military, the time is wasted. And our team's first argument was about that there's no problem in the status quo, and since in the status quo, the Korean military and the Korean government is giving lots of benefits to the soldiers, this is enough for the soldiers and there's no problem in the status quo. And our second argument was that this is in the military problem, this is the point when we can limit the soldiers' freedom for to protect the country. And our last argument was about the purpose of the mandatory military conscription. Forcing people to go to the military not because of the fun, they are forcing citizens to go to the military because the government is trying to protect the citizens, even though the government can violate some of the freedom of the rights. And now I would like to I would like to talk about the best case scenario and the worst case scenario. In their world, the government can take the risk that there will be less soldiers than any other country, for example, North Korea or China or whatever not, and the military. So in any invades from North Korea or other countries, we cannot. The Korean government and the Korean military cannot prepare at all and just get attacked by them. And our worst case scenario, that in our world we have a worst case which soldiers get violated in few rights and freedom just to protect our South Korea's case, and which is unstable. Mr. and Madam Speaker, we believe that we, the honorable opposition team, won today's debate because we believe that the point of today's debate is mandatory. Is mandatory military justified or not? We believe the mandatory military is justified because first, the government is already giving more advantages and even considering about giving lots of chances and opportunities when they come back to our society. Also, we are keeping the government's role to protect the citizens. Mr. and Madam Speaker, the irresponsible government side keep saying about the alternative which have no mechanism and no specific detail that AIs and technologies can be replaced with no facts and to support the idea. Therefore, we believe that the honorable opposition got this debate home. Thank you.
In my speech now, I'd like to open the government to find myself's case. Here.
Master.
Yep.
judge, I think it was the middle school tournament, the 100 years tournament that actually was the war that actually fight with punch or fight with sword. We believe that actually we keep advice and we keep giving a solution. You have to live in reality, not the past. So let's move on to why we clearly win this debate. There are two main reasons why we clearly take this debate. First, we take the frame of this debate, and secondly, why our side's worst case is much more better than their side's best case. So let's move on to first case, the frame of this debate. The main metric that we have to think about in this debate was mainly two things. Firstly, liberty. Secondly, security. So let's move on to first step by step. Firstly, about the liberty. Actually, our side actually provide the chance and choice for those citizens to actually use those 1 year to 2 years for their precious time or their research or whatever they want. So we actually give them maximum, we give the choice maximization for those citizens. But what their case is, their case, firstly, you get $100 per month. Secondly, you can use your phone. Secondly, thirdly, you can buy what you want. Fourthly, you have to sleep with 7 guys. And lastly, you don't know when you die. So we believe that actually there is that it is so much fair, the treatment that government are providing you. Who think this is fair? There is totally lost in the liberty. Let's move on to second reason, which is about the security. And there, in our case, we are developing our AI tax or other technology that can protect our country with using of the last month that they just waste of those recruiting those soldiers. So we believe that actually we are developing those technology to actually keep going up with those country's security level. But what their case is just making the more waste of soldier and giving recruitment. But when the ICBM come to their world, maybe there's a soldier right hand to hand and make a magic shield for them. But that doesn't happen in reality. We believe that their only making the imaginary world that actually when those soldiers is a loss of amount of soldiers come together, they will protect the country immediately. We can't understand any logical flaw of their case. So let's move on to lastly talk about the best case and worst case comparison of this debate. So in our case, worst case, in their case, best case, there are thousands of soldiers that actually want to fight and want that they have enough skills or brave. But when we keep giving the advice that actually when those ICBM or nuclear missiles actually come to you, there are no solution for just one soldier can have barrier for this. So we believe that actually their best case cannot protect country anyway. But when we go to our worst case, maybe there are very less soldiers that we can provide for citizens, but still we can use other extra money to actually develop those AI tax, and we develop those nuclear missile tax to actually we can make the resources that actually needed and actually really needed and necessary for the war. So we can actually prevent the war, and we can actually develop the security level. So we can actually provide the best security than their best case. So in our case, worst case is much more better secure than their best case, which was their main principle in this debate. So let's move on to talk about in conclusion. Firstly, we take this frame of this debate, which is about the firstly we take liberty. And secondly, we take the security. And lastly, our side's worst case is much more secure than their side's best case, which was their side's main principle. So because those reasons, I'm more than really proud to propose.